Evie found the box nestled in her mailbox like a spider waiting in its web, deep blue velvet, wrapped with a yellow bow and a tag that made her stomach twist. From your biggest fan. Please open me on camera. Another fan who tracked down her address. Great. She clutched her morning coffee, the same chipped NASA mug she'd had since college before YouTube became her lifeline. Back then, true crime had been her escape. Now, at 26, she had 800,000 subscribers who counted on her to give voices to the voiceless. She glanced down the empty Tennessee road, suddenly aware of how isolated her parents' farmhouse was. 20 acres of land stretched behind the property, ending in dense woods that always seemed to whisper. The pines swayed in the autumn breeze, their shadows dancing across the overgrown grass like reaching fingers. The nearest neighbor was 2 miles away, and her parents wouldn't return from their Writers' Expo in Louisiana for another 3 days. The thought made her skin prickle. The old farmhouse loomed behind her, its weathered face hiding secrets in every shadow. Paint peeled from the clapboards like dead skin, revealing the dark wood beneath. They'd moved here 2 years ago, drawn by the promise of peace and quiet after Mom's cancer scare. The doctors had recommended reducing stress, and Dad had always wanted to write his novel. Now that quiet felt like a threat, like the silence before a predator strikes. My fans are wild, she muttered, turning the box over. Most of her subscribers were wonderful, but there were always the ones who took things too far. The ones who left comments about her hair, her clothes, and what she'd look like if they ever got her alone. She'd learned to ignore them, but sometimes their words would crawl through her mind late at night like insects. Inside, the house felt different, wrong. The familiar creaks and groans of the old structure seemed deliberate, as if the walls themselves were listening. Evie had grown used to the sounds of settling wood and aging pipes, but lately they'd changed. Sometimes she could swear she heard movement in the walls late at night. Probably mice, she told herself, ignoring how the sounds seemed to follow her from room to room. Ignoring how they sometimes sounded like fingernails scraping against wood. The morning sun streaming through the kitchen windows did little to warm the chill that crept up her spine. Dust motes danced in the light, forming patterns that almost looked like faces before dissolving. The box sat on the counter while she cooked her eggs, its presence heavy in her peripheral vision. Her phone was upstairs and her fingers itched to grab it. Her fans would want to see this. They always did. She cracked the eggs one-handed, a trick her mother had taught her during their Sunday morning cooking sessions back when things were normal. Before she'd started investigating Tiffany Laynard's case, the latest in a string of mysteries she'd taken on, this one from Mississippi. After watching one of her videos, Tiffany's mother had called her in tears. "Please," she'd begged. "You're our last hope." Evie had promised to help. She always did. A thump echoed from somewhere upstairs. Evie froze, spatula hovering over the pan. Probably just the house settling. But hadn't she heard that same sound last night? She turned off the stove and moved toward the stairs, each step careful and deliberate. The old wood creaked beneath her feet, but something about the sound seemed off, as if someone was following her, matching her pace. Her phone sat on her bedroom desk, untouched, but hadn't she left it on the nightstand? The screen showed 3 missed calls from an unknown number, all at 3:33 a.m. She hadn't heard it ring. Within minutes of going live, thousands were watching. The comment section moved so fast she could barely read it, a blur of emojis, warnings, and theories. She adjusted her grandmother's necklace, the small silver key pendant that had become her channel's unofficial symbol. Fans called themselves key seekers in their quest for truth. "Hey there, freaks and geeks," she forced a cheerful tone, trying to ignore how the shadows in her room seemed deeper than usual. "I'm working on an update video about Tiffany Laynard, but something interesting happened. Seems one of you found my address." The chat exploded with emojis and messages. A $5 super chat flashed. "Someone knows where you are. You're not safe." Another followed. "Evie, someone is doxing you." As she read the messages, movement caught her eye on her phone's screen. She whirled around, nothing but her bedroom wall, decorated with true crime posters and timeline charts from her investigations. But for a moment, just a fraction of a second, she could have sworn she saw a face peering around the doorframe. "Should I open it?" she teased, returning to the camera and holding up the box. The viewer count climbed steadily, 10,000, 15,000, 20,000. Why did the number of viewers keep jumping? 50,000, 100,000. More than she'd ever had watching before. The moment she lifted the lid, her heart stopped. Inside was a photograph she'd never seen. Tiffany Laynard, looking young and alive, smiling at something off camera. Beneath it, a typed note read, "You're getting warmer." A $20 super chat rang out. "Evie, we saw it." That was Tiffany. "I'll be back later tonight," she managed, ending the stream with trembling fingers. The house seemed to close in around her. Every corner held shadows that shouldn't be there, and every room felt smaller than she remembered. She called the police, and a dispatcher named Alice promised to send an officer by mid-afternoon. "Stay on the line," Alice said, but the call dropped. When Evie tried to redial, the number was disconnected. That's when she noticed the attic hatch in the hallway. It was open, just a crack, a sliver of darkness peeking through. She'd never been in the attic, neither had her parents. The house groaned above her, and this time she knew those weren't the sounds of settling wood. Somewhere in the house, something shifted, barely audible but unmistakably close. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Check your latest video's metadata." With shaking hands, she opened her YouTube studio. The location data for her last 3 videos showed they had been uploaded from inside her house at 3 a.m. while she was sleeping. And each one had a view count that made no sense, numbers so high they couldn't be real. Her hands trembling, Evie grabbed the old wooden chair from her desk. The attic hatch was just within reach. As she pushed it open, stale air washed over her, carrying the unmistakable scent of unwashed bodies and rotting food. The beam from her phone illuminated a horror she'd been living beneath for months. The attic was a shrine to her channel. Hundreds of printed screenshots from her videos were plastered on the walls. But they weren't just screenshots, they were surveillance photos, photos of her sleeping, cooking, and filming, all captured through tiny holes drilled in her ceiling, now visible in the harsh light of her phone. One corner was dominated by a neat workspace lit by the glow of multiple monitors. Empty energy drink cans and food wrappers littered the floor. Her bedroom played in real time on the primary monitor, captured by hidden cameras she'd never noticed. She recognized herself sleeping, eating, and investigating the very person who'd been watching her all along. "Like what I've done with the place." The voice came from behind her. Before she could turn, something hard struck the back of her head. As consciousness faded, she saw her own face on the monitors, multiplied across a dozen screens. Police sirens wailed in the distance, but they would only find an empty house with an attic full of carefully labeled boxes. The last upload to Evie's channel was short, just 30 seconds of a familiar face, Tiffany Laynard, older than her missing person photos, eyes bright with victory. "Hey freaks and geeks," she whispered to the camera. "Welcome to True Crime with Tiffany. Today we're covering the mysterious disappearance of popular YouTuber Evie Marshall. Don't forget to like and subscribe.